I'm Nick Savoy, and you guys are in for a real treat over the next 3 days. I mean, we've brought some of the world's best dating coaches and pickup artists, literally from around the world, to share with you both the best of what the community has to offer in 2010, and also to break new ground, to share the newest and best material that's out there. You know, if you think about some of the stuff that everyone's using today, you know, the beyond words body language techniques, the phone and text game, even the triad model, this stuff all started at super conferences, usually a few years beforehand. So you're going to be exposed to not only the best of what's out there today, but the best of what's going to be coming tomorrow. But before we do that, I want to take something away. Before we add new knowledge in, or new techniques, or new skills, I want to talk about some things that might stand in the way of that. And I call them 7 seductive ideas. I originally called it 7 stupid ideas, you know, using my great grade 4 vocabulary there. But they're not stupid ideas. They're seductive because there's a grain of truth to all of them. And they're dangerous, and they're what hold people back. It has often been said that to be really good with women, it's as much about what you don't do as about what you do. To be successful with love systems, it's as much about what you don't do as what you do do. So we're going to talk about some of that right now. Number 1 is just be yourself. We've probably all heard just be yourself. It's usually the type of dating advice you'll get from women. And it's well-meaning. I mean, there's no conspiracy among the 3 billion women to give us all bad dating advice. I'm sure it feels like that sometimes, but there's no actual conspiracy. It's well meant. And when a woman says just be yourself as dating advice, what she's saying is sincere. I mean, women don't tend to like guys who are liars, who are manipulative, who pretend to be something they're not, who are incongruent, who put on a front, who can't be in touch with who they really are. I mean, that's all very true. But at the same time, the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. When a woman says just be yourself, she's thinking of once she already wants to get to know you. If she doesn't care who you are, being yourself isn't going to help. I mean, I wrote about this on my blog a little while ago. There's a men's magazine, which I've now revealed what it was, that has a female blogger who writes a dating diary. And this isn't to make fun of her. I mean, she seems like a very sweet girl. But they've pumped this up as, you know, dating advice for men. And this woman was writing about how she got picked up at the gym. And she turned it into, okay, here's how you meet women at the gym. And what this guy did is he walked in. He's a professional athlete. He's buff. He works out every day. And he's astonishingly good looking. So she looks over at him. He looks over at her. And he smiles. And she smiles back. And then he walks over to her, and in the first minute, you know, she asks him what he does for a living and so on, finds out he's a professional athlete / movie producer and so on, lives an extraordinary lifestyle. Then he asks for her phone number. Was he being himself? Damn right. But does that work if she's not already attracted to you? Absolutely not, because you know, and I know, that the 9 other guys who looked at her that day and smiled at her, she scowled at them and was like, oh my God, what's up with all the creepy guys today? So just be yourself is not necessarily the solution here. Just be me is also not the solution. And you laugh, but I've literally been out to bars or clubs where people are dressed like me, talking like me, some even pretending to be me. Yeah, that's creepy. And whoever was starting to applaud there, I have no idea why. But the idea, where this all comes from, this idea of just be yourself or just be me, it comes from a desire for simplicity. And that's why this is connected to the myth of natural game. And that's what makes this so bloody dangerous. Because the idea, I mean, who's heard, you know, just be yourself, just go out and be natural? Well, sure, great. That's the destination. I mean, we all want to naturally have all the behaviors and instincts of a man who is successful with women. We all want to be able just to instinctively know what to do in a given situation. That's natural game. All the love systems instructors have that, but they weren't born with it. That developing the right instincts and the right habits, some people just won the genetic lottery and got it. Some people just learned it through osmosis from older brothers, uncles, whatever. Some people just intuitively figured it out themselves. And other people have to develop and learn those habits and beliefs. And those habits and instincts. And once you have those habits and instincts, such that you can be on autopilot and you will automatically know, okay, she did this, so I want to do this. She did this, so I'll do that. When you've got that, that's the destination. That's where we're trying to get you to. But that's not the journey. If this were a wealth building seminar, I wouldn't be allowed within 50 feet of the stage. But if this were a wealth building seminar, and the whole point of this was, how do you get rich? And I say, well, you go out and be a millionaire. You'd say, okay, that's where we're going to. That's not the process. So the idea that there's just a quick fix like this, I want to try to banish that. About 1,000 years ago in Europe, it's a pretty difficult time in Europe. It wasn't even the concept of Europe. It was, with the Christian lands of what's now Europe. It's called Christendom. And, it was a time of a lot of uncertainty. There were Saracens raiding from the south. There were Ottomans coming in from the southeast. There were Magyars and then Mongols coming from the steppes. It was a time of a lot of uncertainty and panic, and people looked for easy solutions. And out of that came something called the Kingdom of Prester John. And this was some large Christian kingdom that existed in Asia or Africa. Here's a hint. If you want to create some mythical friend to help you at least know what continent he's on. This large Christian kingdom that was out there in the back of all of these enemies. So it would no longer be Christendom that was under assault from everyone, from all directions. Now Christendom and the Kingdom of Prester John would combine. And people believed this. Popes wrote letters to Prester John and sent explorers out to find him. Emperors, wrote him letters and sent gifts. He never existed in any way at all. The Kingdom of Prester John is not somewhere else out there. It's not something that's going to be handled in one sentence. It's a whole bunch of little things, little habits, little instincts that added together will make you more successful with women. The second seductive idea is that this is like a physical science. That this bottle of water, when I heat this bottle of water at 212 degrees, it will boil every time. It doesn't matter if the bottle of water has a boyfriend. It doesn't matter if this bottle of water has seen me boiling other bottles of water. It's going to boil every frickin' time. It's tempting to think the love systems or the science of dating and attracting women could be like that. That there's some perfect pickup, that you just need to follow enough rules and something will always work every time. It's not like that. It's more of a social science. It's more like a language or a dialect, love systems is. It's more like the rules of grammar. Why does grammar exist in a language? Is it just so that teachers have some excuse to torture little children? Of course, that's part of it. But part of it is also to allow us to communicate to each other. Grammar is what makes the difference between man bites dog and dog bites man. It's a tool used to communicate. And when you learn a second language or a foreign language, you're often going to get to the grammar pretty quickly. And in fact, you're often going to learn more grammar than a native speaker than a native speaker knows. How many people here know what a gerund is? Or a past participle? I've used both of those in the last 5 minutes, and I couldn't give you the definition of either of them. But somebody learning English would learn what those are because they're learning how to communicate. So in terms of us learning how to communicate with beautiful women, where it's not about just be yourself, and it's not about be someone else, but it's about being your best self, how do you communicate that best self instantly to a beautiful woman who at first glance doesn't care? And that's the essence of what a lot of this is about, and that's why the grammar of love systems, or the grammar of communication with beautiful women, comes into play. I was training this guy, actually, his name was Charlie, and we're doing a one-on-one at this hotel bar in Los Angeles, and he was talking to this woman, and he's doing pretty well, and so we backed away a little bit because, once you've been doing this for a while, you can see everything. You take me to a bar or restaurant anywhere in the world, I can tell you who's on a date and how it's going, because it's really all about the physical conversation that's going on between two people. So we backed away, and we were watching what he was doing. And a few minutes later, he came back to us. And this was a little surprising, because things seemed to be going well. So we're like, what was wrong? And he's like, well, she wanted to go back to her room. I'm like, well, what was the problem with that? He said, well, I hadn't finished qualification yet. So the rules of love system, I wrote the love systems triad model. I did not bring it down from Mount Sinai on stone tablets. I speak English perfectly well, and I break the rules of grammar all the time to communicate. The models and tools that we're giving you over the super conference, these are tools and techniques. They're not straitjackets. And when you are in command of the language of attracting beautiful women, you can break all of the rules of grammar. I mean, if you read Future's blog, and you really should, because he's an astonishingly great writer and communicates dating advice ideas really well, you will see that the tools of the English language, just like the tools of love systems, these are tools in his hand that he is using. I mean, he is working with them to communicate ideas. And in the same way, when you are interacting with women, the purpose is not to run through the love systems triad model. The purpose is to meet your goals and achieve the lifestyle you want with beautiful women. So that's the second deadly myth. The third, attracting women has to be complicated. The whole love systems triad model that underpins everything we do can be summarized in just one sentence. Your best chances of succeeding with a beautiful woman, and you don't have to write this down, this is going to be in the handouts, but the best chances of succeeding with a beautiful woman come by making an emotional connection, a physical connection, and by you driving the logistics forward. And your best chances of success come when you do all three of those at the same time. And that's it. That's Love Systems Triad model. Now, are we all done here? Do we want to go home? No, of course not, because the next obvious question is, how do we do that? Okay, how do you build an emotional connection? And then you can break that down to a level of detail. Well, first you have to approach, then you transition. Whatever you've approached her with, you turn that into a normal conversation that's free-flowing as opposed to, this is my excuse for approaching you, and so on and so forth. And each of those steps can be broken down. I mean, there are details. Any body of knowledge worth its salt stands up to the weight of details. I mean, there's details in this bottle of water, too. If we're a mile above sea level, this won't boil at 212 degrees. It'll boil, maybe 208, a little less. I put a little bit of salt in it. It boils a little higher than 212 degrees. Do I need to know that to boil water to make coffee in the morning? Absolutely not. If I was planning on going up and living in the mountains, that might be an interesting thing to know. I might learn it from experience, or I might go look it up in a book. The details exist and are true, but the object is not to master every single detail. I mean, if you approach any love systems instructor, all of whom have 1,000 times more knowledge about dating and attraction than any normal human being would need, in the same way, just because it's the job, in the same way that any nuclear engineer has 1,000 times more knowledge about nuclear physics than any normal human being would need. If you approach any love systems instructor and say, okay, here's a situation. It's 1:15 at night. There's 6 guys, 1 girl in the corner of the bar. I've already talked to the girl. This, and this happened. Then the guy said this, and this to me. Here's my logistics. Here's his logistics. He could tell you what to do. But you don't need to memorize every possible permutation of those before you go out in the morning or go out at night. So it doesn't need to be complicated just because there's details. And I would say that if you have in your head more than 5 acronyms or made-up words to describe the process of dating and attraction, which, by the way, predates language. So if you've had to improve the English language enough to add more than 5 acronyms or made-up words, you've made things too complicated for yourself. The other reason why the idea of this complication is so seductive is because it creates the idea of a perfect pickup. You know, if I could just know all of the different permutations before I go out, then I could do every pickup perfectly. But what you're doing there is you're defeating the whole purpose. I mean, sure, there are 3 billion women in the world. In theory, it would be possible to write a book about each of them and how to seduce each and every one of them. You'd never have time to read them, and they'd be all out of date by the time they were done, but that's the opposite extreme. We're bringing this back a level. So focus on what's most important, learn the details as you need them, but don't overcomplicate it for yourself. You can turn it on and off. You know, how many people act like they have one pickup persona that they use at a bar or a club and another one that they use in their regular life? That's incongruence. And women can smell incongruence a mile away. I mean, when you think of the things that are attractive to women, and the Don will be up here in a couple hours and go over some of the fundamentals of attraction, you know, a couple of them are things like pre-selection. Other women are attracted to you, or that you're a challenge. There's nothing inherently attractive about these. You know, and you could even argue that biologically you don't want a guy that's pre-selected. These are not inherently attractive, but they're congruence tests. Let me go back to the woman at the gym who got picked up by the professional athlete / movie producer. Let's say that, you know, after they met and exchanged phone numbers, he walked back over to his friends and he was jumping up and down with glee. And he was texting her every hour to tell her how happy he was that he met her. And then after 2 dates, wanted to get married. This guy's not a challenge. He doesn't seem to be very pre-selected. Doesn't seem to have a lot of other women who are interested in him, or he'd have more experience with this. Doesn't seem very confident. And it starts to call into question, wait a minute, is he really a professional athlete, rich, you know, as awesome looking as I thought he was, and all that other stuff? Because anybody that's got all of these things should also have the other stuff. And that's why attraction often works backwards. And women will like a guy who's confident. Women will like a guy who's a challenge. Women will like a guy who's pre-selected by women, not because there's anything inherently attractive about any of that, but because what else it might say about him. So the more there's a distance between how you are when you are around beautiful women and how you really are, the more trouble you're creating for yourself. Now, that is not to say that you should treat your grandmother's birthday party the same way you'd treat a Vegas nightclub. But when you think about it, the types of things that are attractive to beautiful women, the types of skills and techniques that we talk about developing, making other people comfortable around you, being open emotionally, making other people have fun, navigating difficult social situations, dealing with obstacles, thinking on your feet, being able to lead. These are all, why wouldn't you want to have these qualities in your daily life? I mean, a lot of people here do, but to the extent that any of these qualities need to be developed for your dating life, they're going to help in all your life. I mean, this is something not a lot of people know, but we've been brought in by companies before to train their sales forces. And not how to pick up women, but just we give their training and they take, you know, what they want for their sales force. You know, we've worked with police departments on, you know, some of their undercover techniques. These techniques have utility beyond picking up women. I mean, we focus on dating and attraction, but it's not like you need to compartmentalize this. And in fact, you're going to slow yourself down if you do, because you're depriving yourself of awesome training opportunities. And why do you need training opportunities? Because you're only going to develop habits and instincts through repetition. So practicing body language, for example. I naturally had horrible body language. I used to walk around with my head looking down at the ground, partly because I was always a big, clumsy kid, and if I wasn't looking at the ground, I was going to trip over something. Well, as an adult, walking with your head down is not very attractive. If I only practiced that during the few hours a week that I was interacting with beautiful women, I probably still wouldn't have that fixed. But if I practice it 24/7, just every time I'm walking around, do a head check. Head facing up, good. Head facing up, good. Head facing down, no. Get into the habits. Get into the instincts. That's why a lot of guys that get really good at this, when they try to not be good, it's really hard because they have naturally developed now these instincts and these habits and these behaviors that are inherently attractive to women. So you should not aim to turn it on or turn it off. Cajun's going to be doing a talk on identity up here. I think it's the end of the day tomorrow. And that's really important on how to create a compelling identity that's interesting and attractive to beautiful women, but that's also congruent with who you really are. The fifth seductive idea is to create slides. You need to be able to format them. Now, to be good at love systems, you need to make it the most important part of your life. This is a really dangerous and seductive idea because this is true for every other endeavor you could possibly do in your life other than love systems. If your goal in life was to be fluent in Russian, that was your overriding goal, I would say make that most important thing in your life. Go move to Russia, immerse yourself in Russian language stuff. If your goal in life was to bench press 300 pounds, I'd say, make that your most important thing in your life. Work out, get a workout schedule, watch your diet, watch your other activities that drain energy, and so on. If your goal, or your life goal right now, is to have a lifestyle full of beautiful women, or to meet the one woman you want and settle down with her, whatever that is, if that is your goal, you are being counterproductive by making it the most important thing in your life. And why is that? Because women don't want to be with the guy for whom that's the most important thing in their life. They just don't. Women might find it interesting and exciting. Some do. But, you're not going to, there's nothing that getting kind of long-term sustainability there. Most guys at some point will be in a situation with a woman where they run out of things to say. And that's normal. That's a normal part of developing the right habits and instincts by pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and okay, my mind went blank. That just means you don't have the right habits or instincts for that moment yet. You'll get them. And that's why things like the Love Systems Routines Manual came out to give guys guidelines and structures and so on. And it's normal that that's a part of your development. But with some guys, it doesn't go away. And this was always confusing for me until I realized that with some guys, they run out of things to say because they don't have anything more to say. Because you can't talk about pickup knowledge. And if there's nothing else compelling going on in your life, you're not going to have anything to say. So, Future is going to be, if you get a chance to ask Future in the hallways about breakthrough comfort and about one's passion and purpose, he'll give you a great rundown on how being passionate about something is exceptionally attractive to women. I think Mr. M's going to be up here, I think, on Sunday, talking about lifestyle and how to build a lifestyle that's going to be interesting and attractive to beautiful women. You have to make it important. You have to work on this. You have to put in time to develop the right instincts and habits, but you can't make it the most important thing in your life. Idea number 6. How good you are with women matters to anybody other than you. And that's already a lie because it matters to us. But other than that, it matters to anybody than you. When you've got a beautiful woman on your arm, there's no Romanian judge who's going to come running up to you saying, well, she's beautiful, so you got a 6.0 for that, but I can only give you a 5.4 for style points because that was not a difficult pickup. There's no style points in pickup, and you're not in competition with anybody. And that seems obvious, but I remember a client who was actually got very successful with women. I mean, he's married right now, but this was a couple years ago. And he was beating himself up over the fact that he had this idea that to really reach a plateau at this, that he had to be able to go 5 for 5. I'm not sure exactly what 5 for 5 means. Maybe it's approach 5 women and get 5 women who want to go home with you or date you or whatever. But I've been around for a long time. I've been around since a lot of this stuff began. I've met just about everybody. I've certainly met everybody that's on all the top 10 lists and all this stuff, and nobody goes 5 for 5. Now, if I sit down at the blackjack table and play for long enough, I'll win 5 hands in a row. But that's a big difference from sitting down and going 5 for 5. And at the end of the day, does it really matter anyway? I remember I flew to review some new instructors in a different city once. And it was at a boot camp. I wasn't really all that happy to be there. I was jet-lagged. My luggage had been lost. And things weren't clicking. My instincts and my habits were letting me down. So what did I do? Well, I went back to the grammar. I went back to the basics, the fundamentals of magic, written out in magic bullets or the triad model. And things started to click. And by the end of the night, I'd found someone really interesting, and we left together and spent a lot of time together. I'd consider that to be a good night. Maybe I went 1 for 11. If I went 1 for, if I went 1 for 11 every night, that would be a little disappointing. But maybe I went 1 for 11. Big deal. I mean, that just meant that the other 10 girls went home with a guy with a smaller dick. Your schedule cannot possibly be that tight that rate statistics matter. That not only do you have to meet the type of beautiful women you want to meet in your life, but you can't possibly have any rejection or any conversation that doesn't lead there in the meantime. It can't possibly be that tight. So drop rate statistics. Drop even worrying about that. I'm sure you might hear instructors talking about that kind of stuff, but that's because that's their job. You can't be a love systems instructor and go 1 for 10 every night. You just can't. But this isn't instructor training. You're not here to become an instructor. You're here to meet your goals. And these doesn't matter to other than, we're behind you, and I'm sure your friends and your family are trying to be, are supportive of you achieving happiness. But other than that, it doesn't matter to anybody other than you. The last seductive idea is that you can't do it for some reason. Sometimes people see me and they're like, oh, well, of course you can pick up women, you're tall. It's like, yeah, that sure worked for the first 25 years of my life. And if you look at the other love systems instructors, I've seen houseplants that are taller than some of them, and better looking, too. It's more compelling than that, though, is that I think pretty much every single one of us, myself included, were once sitting in those chairs that you're sitting in. We all once sat down and took a program and learned from it and developed our knowledge over time. So anything you see an instructor do, if you're coming out with us to the bars and clubs, if you ever have the thought that you can't do that, just shake that out of your head. You can do it. This is living proof that they could do it. I remember, I've trained a few of these instructors came to boot camps that I was running personally. And let me tell you, at the time, it wasn't like these guys were born to become love systems instructors or born to have these kinds of skills with women. It's developed over, having the right information, having the right beliefs, developing the right habits and instincts, and then letting time take its course. But there is absolutely nothing that any of them can do that you can't do. Let me break down the distance a little bit here. How many people didn't have a girlfriend in high school? Put your hand up. How many people made up? Keep your hands up. Leave your hands up if you made up having a girlfriend at some point just to keep your friends and family off your back. Yeah, mine was Michelle. Keep your hands up if, keep your hands up if, you spent definitely a few years with highly unsuitable women just because you thought that was all you were going to get. Yep. And then keep it up if, say, you're a college newspaper, and we're not going to, let's say minimum 15,000 students, decided to single you personally out as somebody who has no success with women. Okay, so that would be me. You know, I have a phrase that I often say is that anybody who's trying to teach you something that talks more about themselves and they talk about you is somebody you should run from. You know, this isn't about me, but to create, I really want to break down the distance. The first night that I went out and tried, okay, I'm going to go out and meet a woman at a bar, I went 0 for 15. That's not 0 for 15 like women that slept with me or gave me their phone number. That's 0 for 15 in terms of I finished the opener before they walked away. So, wherever you're starting, and it's back then it was a little bit harder because, and I'm going to do my best grandpa imitation. We used to have to walk 14 hours to school both ways. It was uphill both ways, and it was through the desert heat and the snow and all of that stuff. But back then we didn't have things like the super conference or the attraction forums or even the triad model or whatever. And it's still possible to develop the right beliefs and habits and instincts such that you can be successful with women. But where the idea of I can't do it, that's your ego talking. That sounds odd, like your ego's telling you can't do something. But what your ego's trying to do is protect yourself. I mean, if you told me, to go do a pole vault, and I don't do it, well, I'm not going to feel too bad about that because I can't do a pole vault. It's just a physical limitation I have. No big deal. Let's move on. But a lot of times we'll be training a guy, and then the light will go off in his head. He's like, shit. The last 10 years I've been making excuses for myself. Like every time I go to a bar and I see people hooking up, I'm like, well, they must have known each other beforehand, or he must be rich, or they must be boyfriend and girlfriend, or whatever excuse is out there to take it out of your hands. But I want to rip that ego away, regardless of what's happened in the past. And believe me, everyone asks where the hell we were 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, we weren't anywhere. I would love to know where we were 10 years ago. A lot of this stuff didn't exist then. But we're here today. So wherever you want to go with your life, and with your lifestyle, and with dating and attracting women, you are here today to do it. These myths are really seductive because, as I said, there's a grain of truth to all of them. They all sound logical, they all sound tempting, and they all sound like things we want to believe. But they're all wrong. The kingdom of Prester John is not out there. It's not in Europe, he's not in Africa, he's not in Asia, and he's certainly not in Las Vegas. But there's somebody here who can do way more than Prester John can to help you reach the lifestyle you want. And by the way, that's the lifestyle you want, not the lifestyle you deserve. Nobody deserves anything. But if you want it and you know how to get it, you'll get there. And there's one person here who can help you do that. And that's you. So on that note, I'd like to bring Future up to explain Love System's triad model to you. Thank you very much.